Hello, and in this part 2 video I'm going to describe a plan you made and later changed, and you should say what the plan was, when you changed your mind, why you changed your mind, and explain how you felt about it. This is actually something that happened to me very recently. I was planning to take a trip to Disney World in Florida with my family. We've been there a couple of times before, and my kids were pestering me to go again. We only had a week's holiday, and I really fancied going there to have a break from the routine. Everyday life can become monotonous and wearisome, and I felt that we all needed some sunshine and a chance to let off steam. I spent a couple of weeks researching hotels and flights, trying to find the best price because I'm very careful with money and don't like to overspend. To help me with this process, I created an Excel spreadsheet with all the costings because I was trying to work to a budget that I had set myself. When I finally reached the stage that I was happy with the choices I had made, particularly because it was coming in under budget, I got out my credit card to make the booking. The first thing to do was book the flights, and I input all my details and my family's, and then got to the page where you put in the credit card details. I filled in the long credit card number, the security code and the expiry date, and then suddenly I hesitated. I can't even explain why, but the cursor was just hovering over the Pay Now button, and I couldn't click it. So many thoughts were going through my head, and I was having doubts about spending such an astronomical amount of money, comparatively speaking, for a week in the sun. Thoughts popped into my head of how I could better spend that money, and so I never pressed the button. Do I regret it? Yes and no. Yes, because next week I won't be lying in the sun or meeting Mickey Mouse. But on the other hand, I won't be feeling guilty for splashing out on an overpriced holiday. We're going to have a staycation instead. Okay, I think one of the most difficult things to do in IELTS speaking, particularly in part 2, is think of what you're going to talk about. When I look at these topics, despite being a native speaker, it sometimes takes me a few minutes to think of what I'm going to say, and you don't have that in the IELTS exam. You have 1 minute to prepare. So I think one of the main things to prepare is look at the topics that are coming up, such as those in this video course, and just know not exactly what you're going to say, but what you would talk about. So if it is a plan that has changed, this one is a useful idea, so a holiday that you had planned, but then you changed your mind, either because of illness or a change in circumstances or whatever. But you can spend that minute just thinking of an idea, and then you're not focusing on the language. So let's take a look at the language in this one. Particularly, grammar is very good in this answer, and if it's something you've planned and then changed your mind, you are going to be using past tenses. So we've got here, I was planning to take a trip. So I've got quite a few past continuous because they're good for describing things in the past. I was planning to take a trip. My kids were pestering me, so they're describing long actions in the past. To pester means to keep asking somebody to do something, which is what kids do. We call it pester power, when kids keep pestering you either to buy them something or to do something with them. We've got I'm trying to work to a budget here. It was coming in under budget. So past continuous is very good for telling stories in the past. We've got present perfect to say we've been there a couple of times before, but I don't say when, so I use present perfect. I've got past perfect for things that were decided before or things that were done before something else in the past. So the budget I had set myself, the choices I had made. So it's a great way to get lots of good complex grammar in your answer. Here, to fancy doing something, this is a verb pattern, fancy plus verb plus ing. When you fancy doing something, it means you'd really like to do something. I fancy going to the cinema tonight. I fancy going to a restaurant to have pizza tonight. So that's a useful verb. Let's have a look at some of the lexical resource. To have a break from the routine. Our lives are very much routine. We tend to do the same things week in, week out. So this is a good idiomatic expression, a collocation where you take a break from the routine, and it means that you just have a break from doing what you normally do, because everyday life is monotonous, and that means it's always the same thing happening over and over again. Monotonous also means boring. Wearisome, this is something that's very tiring. Everyday life's wearisome. It makes you weary. Weary means tired. So if you feel wearisome, you're feeling tired, and it's the routine that's making everybody tired. And going on holiday, you have a chance to let off steam. If you think of yourself like a big machine where steam is building up inside of you, pressure is building up inside you, you need to let off that steam. And if you let off steam, you kind of release all of that pressure. And it's a great idiomatic expression. We've got overspend, spend too much. Costings, this is just another way of saying the cost. A budget, this is very useful for IELTS speaking and writing. A budget is, for example, if you say, my budget for the holiday is $1,000, that's the amount you are prepared to spend. And you have under budget and over budget. So if it's under budget and your budget is $1,000, it's $900, for example. Over budget, you're spending more than the $1,000. It's got a few verbs here meaning to put in your details, the verb input. Now it's an irregular verb. We don't say inputted, we say input. And another one here, to fill in. Or we've got put in here. So these are different ways of when you're completing something, completing a form. Input, put in, fill in the details. So security code, you might not use this in the IELTS exam, but it's useful to know in English because you get asked it a lot. It's the 3-digit number on the back of your credit card. And the expiry date is when the card finishes. So if it's 07/20, then you cannot use the card after July 2020. I hesitated. When you hesitate, you suddenly stop and think, oh, I don't know whether to do this or not. So I hesitated, I stopped, I paused. Got some good grammar again. The cursor was just hovering over. The cursor is the thing on your computer that you click on things with, and if it's hovering over, it's not touching it, but it's over it. And so the thoughts were going through my head. I was having doubts. This is about a plan that you've changed, probably because you've had doubts. So this is a very useful phrase, to have doubts about something. And you can see if we use a verb, it's an ing, to have doubts about doing something. An astronomical amount of money. Very good phrase for writing and speaking, and it means a huge amount of money. But I'm saying comparatively speaking, again, a good phrase, because it means compared to other things. I'm not saying it was £20 million, but I'm saying compared to other holidays, it is quite a lot of money. Thoughts popped into my head. They came into my head. Do I regret it? If you regret something, you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. In this case, I wish I had done it. I wish I'd booked it. So this is a feeling of regret. The verb to regret, the noun regret. Here we've got some future continuous, so expanding grammatical range. Won't be lying, won't be meeting. So you've got some very good grammar there. I don't really like, on the other hand, when it's used in IELTS writing, because I think you can use more complex expressions such as in contrast, conversely, but in speaking it's fine on the other hand. And again, we've got some future continuous. I won't be feeling. And if you feel guilty, you feel bad about something, and you feel guilty about or guilty for something. And to splash out on something means to spend quite a lot of money on something that you maybe didn't need or couldn't afford. And it was an overpriced holiday. Think always about using adjectives to describe something to make your writing and speaking more complex. We're going to have, so you've got another bit of grammar in there, and very new word in English. Came into English about, I don't know, 5 years ago maybe, because a lot of British people suddenly found that going abroad on holiday was very expensive and we didn't have enough money to go. So we decided to stay at home but have a holiday at home. I'm actually doing this next week, and we call it a staycation, and it's like a stay-at-home vacation. So we created a new word, a staycation. So if you're describing any kind of holiday where you're having it in your own country, you can describe it as a staycation, and that's a good, new, less common word for IELTS. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.